I believe that India is one of the few countries which is in the 19th century, 20th century, and the 21st century.
The startups ecosystem is such that everyone is in a hurry to become a unicorn.
We need basic research, which will get primarily funded by government and philanthropy, some industry, and we need applied research, which will primarily get funded by industry.
I'm going to start with a question. I have questions just as a journalist covering India and the Indian economy, and I'm going to start with one of those. You have in India's IT sector something that's absolutely extraordinary. It's world-class. But in my view, as a foreigner, coming in and obnoxiously asking questions and writing about India, it's not enough. Create employment for your probably hundreds of millions of left-behind people. Where does India get this sort of the other industries develop, and where do you get the more modest jobs in your society, right?
I believe that India is one of the few countries which is in the 19th century, 20th century, and the 21st century. So we have 40% of our population dependent on agriculture today.
40.
That's primarily in the 19th century. Automation is starting to, hit that industry, but it's still low in terms of productivity. It contributes, if I remember right, about 20% to the GDP or 17% to the GDP growth. 17% to the GDP grows. 17% grows at about 3%. So it actually drags down the economy. And in the 20th century, we have our manufacturing sector, which is fast transitioning to the 21st century. It's probably around 20% of our GDP, and maybe employs about 25% of the population. And India, surprisingly, is actually primarily today a services economy. So jobs are being created in the services side today, but it's typically at the bottom that these jobs are being created. We need to, as we transition to a developed economy, as we need to increase our per capita income, we need to take these people to the next level, which will require us to educate people in a bigger way, in a more programmatic way, structured way. We need to look at vocational training, and the challenge is, as we transition, all these sectors are getting impacted by technology. Right. So India has a very, very challenging task ahead of us, and we all need to, of course, work together to make it happen.
So I'd like to hear from you in a minute, but maybe you can reflect on this.
Sure.
As an outsider who's new to India, I'm struck by the incredible quality of your elite schools, in one of which we're sitting right now, and the education at the very top. And again, it's a bit like the IT sector. You're doing incredibly well at the top, but am I not wrong in saying that there's a bit of a gap in vocational education, in training for, jobs in factories, for this sort of, the training for this sort of the more common man or woman, as the case may be?
So John, let me first go to what Kris was mentioning on the economy side. Clearly, India chose services as the lead to grow its economy within the states and at the national level. And there's no right or wrong model. China went manufacturing way, but hand on heart, I can tell you, I am pleasantly surprised how the manufacturing sector is reviving in India. So therefore, the jobs are getting created. That's one end of the rainbow. The other end of the rainbow is there is job opportunity or employment being generated in the unorganized sector, which are low-paying jobs, and those don't get into the data when we look at employability and
But isn't it true that these are low-quality jobs?
I know. I'm just saying that I'm giving you the two ends of the spectrum here.
Yeah.
Right? And what Kris mentioned is there is a large gap in between which needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Vocational training is one piece which I believe can really not only give employability, but also generate entrepreneurs who may not want to, go into getting a low-paying job. And therefore, the Government of India and the Ministry of Education came up with this model of setting up vocational training centers in schools.
So on employability, when I look at what the IT industry has done, see, in IT industry, what happens is the technology is moving very fast, and there is no way a academic institution is going to keep pace with the changes in technology, because there you have to educate the teacher to learn the technology first, and then you educate the student to use the technology. Curriculum needs to change, exams have to be changed, etc. So that's a long drawn process. So what industry has done is to create a training process within the industry itself. The industry takes a continuing education as its responsibility and keeps retraining people on an ongoing basis. So for example, 5 million people are employed. The industry is transitioning to AI.
Yes.
And all the major companies are training people on AI tools right now, because they can't be sent back to academic institutions to get retrained. And unlike the developed economy where you fire the person and rehire a new set of people, or hire a new set of people, India has taken the route of retraining the people and retaining them.
It's more responsible, isn't it? But this is your existing workforce, which again, in my view, is a very elite, lucky, successful, on the whole, group of people. I'm still intrigued by the recent school graduates who you guys or your companies, or say the private sector's companies, are finding wanting. There's a gap there, and you answered some of this already. What the government's doing. Do you think the private sector is doing enough to hone the skills base?
Yeah, private sector is getting engaged on the vocational training. Private sector is also retraining employees within the business itself. But there is a cultural shift that's required. And Rakesh mentioned this. See, today, when somebody passes 12th or goes from the school to, let's say, college, their mind is that they need to actually become a white-collar worker, an office job.
Do people look down on blue-collar jobs in India? It seems like we spent part of this year speaking to Indians of very, very modest means all over the country, and they all aspired to office jobs for some reason, even if they weren't very good office jobs. Do people look down on good factory work?
No.
They don't?
I don't think so.
Okay.
In fact, if you see more and more labor which is getting into the manufacturing sector, it's not just that the person who's working feels, matter of pride. Even the management feels that they're contributing. The matter of fact is that, as I mentioned, the manufacturing sector is sort of getting back into the flavor.
Yes.
With all this. And also, the point is, it's just not office job. And there's a huge potential on tourism, right? We just need to have youth trained and become good tourist guides. Huge potential India has. So therefore, it's not that there is dearth of opportunities. It is, I think, the ecosystem which needs to be shaken up. I mean, let me use that word.
And I'm wondering to what extent startup businesses could be one of the answers about what India does with its enormous demographic bulge. And again, maybe I assume you work in a pretty rarefied world of really, really good startups.
No.
But a startup can also be, I don't know, a taxi service or...
It has impact on the job scene. One of the fastest growing job markets is Bangalore. And the reason for that is the startup ecosystem that exists in Bangalore creates large number of jobs in the logistics space, large number of taxis are created, large number of buses ply the roads. There are people who have to cook for these people. There are people who have to clean for this. There's a huge economy that's created around the startup ecosystem. The startup ecosystem employs probably I don't have the exact number, but if you say 5 million in the IT services, it may be employing about 1 million or so.
In all of India?
In the startup sector.
Okay.
But the indirect effect of that throughout the economy is probably 10 times that.
Maybe I've got my head wrong, but I'm thinking startups also like just small business. I don't hear a lot of people talking about small business.
Right. So
in modest things, not in IT.
No, so the startup is defined as those that can be scaled up. It's technology dependent.
You're talking about IT and the really good stuff.
No, digital technology.
It's digital technology in the entire space. But I think the matter of fact, what Kris is talking about is, the startups ecosystem is such that everyone is in a hurry to become a unicorn. You understand? So they really don't get into the fiscal discipline on day one. And I think that is something which, and this is the world over, I'm not just talking about
I don't think
this
that's
is
just
something
India.
which needs to be really looked at. Responsible businesses will always look at responsible fiscal discipline also. Here, the more you burn, the more losses you can raise more funding. So it's quite a skewed up system which sort of exists today. But having said that, I think on the startup ecosystem, India has demonstrated that we can deliver hundreds of new startups every year, adding into the city. The challenge which I see is how many of them are going to really scale up.
And I was actually, for my own work at the FT, pulling the numbers on R&D spending as percentage of GDP, which is usually an indicator of where an economy is going to go. And we were talking about this beforehand.
Right.
I think in Korea, it's like 5% of GDP. What is it in India?
0.7.
0.7, right? So,
but in that 0.7, industry does 0.3. So which is even a lower number.
what's wrong and whose fault is it?
When the industry gives money on research funding, it needs visibility of every rupee being spent. And the research project for which the funding was taken, feedback is given on regular basis, and once the project is done, then a complete interaction needs to happen. On the industry side, I don't think the industry is bold enough to put high amount of rupees or dollars, if I may say, in research, because that ecosystem has not developed and it's taken far too long. The time has come when we need to look at three stakeholders in this journey. The academic institution which will receive the research funding, the industry, and the government should give matching fund.
Another perspective on this is where is India on its development path?
Yes.
See, the focus has been to look at basic needs. And now I think the need for R&D is being felt more. And forums like these are now discussing that. And I'm actually optimistic that, see, once we decide to do something, I can tell you that we will do it.
So what about this idea of matching funds, which I think they do in South Korea and Israel and the other countries that are doing this well? Can't you get this on the government's agenda, and why isn't it there
Government
already?
does, but majority of the funding goes to the public universities.
We need basic research, which will get primarily funded by government and philanthropy, some industry, and we need applied research, which will primarily get funded by industry.